So covered in dust and perpetual exhaustion has become my natural state lately. 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks now, I've been sanding on this car, and we're done, except for the final cleanup of the dust, and with any luck tomorrow we shoot it. So, but I've got other things going on. We'll do the car tomorrow, bring you up to speed on everything else. First thing is that with Bottle Rocket down, we had some track time. It's very hard for us to actually get out to the track. So when there's the opportunity, we seize it. So with Bottle Rocket down, I figure let's take the daily driver up because you guys have been asking about that. So I figure we'll go make a couple of runs with that thing. By the way, the gas mileage on it, it's averaging right about 20 miles to the gallon. It's a little bit better around town than it is on the highway, but we haven't started to tune it yet. But if I had to peg a mile per gallon on an average, I call it 20 right now. I think we can get it up to 22, 23 pretty easily. But anyway, we figure, well, let's go get some times on this thing. So we drove out to the track last night. We get there and it's closed, right? How often does that happen? They're supposed to be open Saturday nights testing tune, but they were closed. So with any luck, next week we'll get daily driver out to the track and we'll get some times on that. Bottle Rocket being down. So here's where we're at with this. We got our late B-body 8 3/4 housing and axles, which is actually a hard number to come by. By 1971, when they widened these cars, they had pretty much gone to the 8 1/4 across the board. To find an 8 3/4 is kind of rare. Actually, my 73 Roadrunner has an 8 1/4 in it. It's 344 speed. I hammered that thing mercilessly. It never gave me a slightest bit of problem. So I figured, well, it'll live in this, but it didn't. So the 8 1/4 is coming out. The 8 3/4 is going in. The original plan was to use, I have a set of 430s that are already set up, but they're on the lighter duty 741 case, and if it was an automatic car, I'd say it'd be perfect. But instead I'm going to set up another center section. I picked up another spool over here, so I'm going to set up another center section with 456s on a 489 case, which is the heavier duty of the bunch. Now, also, while we've got everything in the works over here, we're going to swap to a deeper pan. With this car, I don't shift when the light goes on. I shift when the oil pressure gauge goes like this. The biggest problem with the shallow pan isn't that there's only 5 quarts in it. The problem is the oil, a lot of the oil stacks right up against the back of the engine. So with the shallow pan, you're losing about a quart, quart and a half, maybe 2 quarts, just caught up in the back of the crankshaft because there's really no place for it to go. So the deeper pan will keep more oil down out of the back of the crankshaft, and we should be able to get by with 6 quarts and not have any problems. By the way, allergies, if I sound like I'm about to cry, right, it's because Tennessee is like a paradise, except for a few weeks in the spring when we get what's called the pollinating, where it's just insane, and then in the fall, when the seasons change, something else happens. And this place is trying to kill you. You know, it's as close to a paradise as you can find, but it'll try to kill you. What else are we going to do in this car? And while we're working on it, we need to add a dry shaft loop, and this is in order to make the car rule book legal, so we can just take it anywhere and run it anytime. We have to add a dry shaft loop, a master cutoff, and I've got to fabricate an aluminum shield between the back seat and the trunk, you know, a firewall. So those are the things that we've got to handle on this car, and that's where we're at there. But why did I want to do this video today, right? Here's the big reason I want to do this video today. So, a lot of you guys are familiar with Mrs. Landy here. This is a 1,000,000-mile, 170 slant 6 Dart that we've had now for, I guess, about 11 years, or thereabouts. And this car, I can't tell you the abuse and the mileage and the neglect that I have put this poor thing through. And she just keeps going and going and going, right? So, yesterday, I'm driving home, it was yesterday, I'm driving home from here, and as I'm pulling out of the lot, I hear, ka-chunk, right? The exhaust system fell out of the car. Oh, shit. What are you going to do, right? All right, I can't leave this car down, right? Even though I've got like, I don't know, like 10 others I could just jump in and drive, I can't leave this car down because it's Mrs. Landy. This is like, you know, the linchpin part of the fleet. So I said, let me cobble together a quick exhaust system just so that, you know, it runs. So I ran in the back, and I found some lengths of pipe and so on and so forth. And I said, oh, I gotta stick some kind of muffler in here. And I was like, what can I stick in here real quick? Let me go grab a glass pack. I started having flashbacks, okay? So I go to the auto parts store and I say, I need a glass pack. I need just a cheap glass pack, 2-inch in, 2-inch out. You know, like up on the top shelf, and I see a Thrush box. I'm like, Thrush muffler, right? Okay, so, right? So, I buy the muffler, only I'm like really disappointed. I take it out of the box and it's not like the Thrush tin can muffler, like from, you know, the 70s, right? Those things were great. They were actually like a tin can. They were just just thin sheet steel that was rolled and like kind of riveted. You know, it's crimped, and it had these ends on it that were like really flimsy, so you could just bend the ends wherever you wanted to bend them, so to make it fit any exhaust system. But when I took it out, it's actually just like a long, skinny. Can you come down here? Come down here. Let's see. Can you see that? There you go. That's what the modern Thrush muffler looks like. It's just the red Flowtech. So I says, all right, let me just cobble this exhaust together real quick so that the car is, like, you know, intact. And I said, all right, I'm gonna, you know what? I can't get to the back of the car. I can only get to over here. And then I started having all of these flashbacks to like high school, right? So, okay, the older guys today, right? You know, muscle car guys, or, you know, traditionalists, are always ragging on the racers. You know, the kids with the Hondas with the fart pipes, right? And they go for the stance thing. You know, they do this with the wheels, and everybody rags on that. And they do the common things. They stick neon under the cars, right? And my generation seems to like get the biggest kick out of that. You know, they're just always forever ragging on these kids. But this setup here brought me back to 1977, 1976, 1977. This was what we did. So, yeah, there were muscle cars everywhere, and they were cheap, right? But we were teenagers. We didn't have those cars. A lot of us had projects that we were building, but we didn't get to drive those projects. You know, those projects were stuff we were gathering parts for and working on and learning and so on and so forth. We drove Econo boxes. We drove like whatever hand-me-down thing we could buy, or would be given to us, or something you could pick up on a paper for $100 that runs and drives. And it was always like a straight 6 or a slant 6, mid-60s economy car. They were everywhere. High school parking lots were not filled with ZL1 Camaros and Hemi Cudas and Boss 429s. No, high school parking lots were filled with Dodge Darts and Chevy Novas and Chevelles, and most of them were 4-doors. But they all had certain things in common, you know, because kids had to do the trend thing, just like today's kids with the Hondas and the fart pipes. So one of those things was a glass pack with a side exit exhaust, just like that, right? You had to have side exit exhaust. If it was, of course, if it was a V8, you'd have 2, right? The trend back then, today these kids go for stance, right? The trend back in those days was to jack the car. They buy the Gabriel hijackers, shackle extensions, jack the car up way in the back. They put these little blue or red lights underneath on the rear axle. They paint the rear axle white, and, you know, to reflect and all of that. They were going for the stance. Everybody had slot wheels, right? The chrome slots were cheap. These cast aluminum ones were a little bit more expensive, right? But this is what we had. I never went for that jacked up look in the back. I always liked that, the factory race car, you know, slightly up in the nose. So this is actually how, like, my cars, my beater cars of the day were set up. This thing, as soon as I started this, I gotta start this. It sounds like high school. As soon as I started this, I had this flashback to, I was a freshman in high school. I had these two friends, Scott and Brian, and I forget, until I started this car, I had completely forgotten about them and forgotten about their names and their car, but they were brothers, and they had a 1967 Chevelle Deluxe 4-door with a straight six, and we one day in the parking lot, in the school parking lot, we hacked together an exhaust system with a thrush can muffler, and we bent it and got the pipe out to the side, and we tied it up, whatever the hell we used to tie it up, and we spent like the next couple of days just blasting around all over Staten Island with this thing in like it was a power glide. So, first gear just all over the place. And like this was our hot rod. Like this is the kind of stuff that really sunk the hook, you know? You had to be there, right? And like I'm sure that most of you guys were. But seriously, the reason I bring this up is because these kids today, right? They're doing exactly the stuff that we did, except that they don't have 6-cylinder 1960s economy cars. They have Honda Accords and Civics and Nissans and all of these other cars. And they're doing exactly the same stuff that we were doing when we were 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. Back then, there were hot rods everywhere. I remember every block had a car that was jacked up with glass packs and so on and so forth, or side pipes, right? Most of them didn't run. Most of them were 307 2 barrels or 289 2 barrels or 318s. They didn't run. They looked the part. They kind of sounded the part if you didn't have an educated ear, if you didn't know what a cam sounded like, right? But they were playing the games. It was a cultural thing, just exactly the same way these kids are doing it today. So I cut them some slack. And if you do have the opportunity to put together something like this, just an ancient beater with some slot mags and a glass pack and everything, do it, because it's nothing but smiles the whole time you're driving it. I see you tomorrow.